Eritor gazed out of the panoramic window of the Ganymede Station lounge, his eyes tracing the familiar patterns of distant stars. The station orbited the massive moon of Jupiter, a hub of activity and trade in the Sol system. For a former space adventurer like him, the station provided a tranquil retreat, a place where he could reflect on his storied past and contemplate the future. The lounge was a haven of calm, bathed in the soft glow of ambient lighting. The hum of conversations from various species filled the air, a testament to the station's diverse clientele. Eritor sipped a drink, the taste a pleasant blend of earth spices and alien fruits. He appreciated the momentary peace, a stark contrast to the chaos he had once known. His mind wandered back to his adventures, the countless planets he had explored, the battles he had fought, and the friends he had lost. It was a life of constant motion and danger, but it was also filled with unparalleled excitement. Now, he found solace in the quiet corners of the galaxy, away from the conflicts that seemed to engulf it. Just as Eritor was about to lose himself in another memory, a shadow fell across his table. He looked up to see a figure clad in the distinct armor of the Raxor, a race known for their aggressive expansion and military prowess. The figure was imposing, with sharp features and an air of authority. Eritor, the figure said, their voice a gravelly mix of strength and urgency. I am Ambassador Kyle of the Raxor. We need your help. Eritor raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. And why would the Raxor need the help of a retired adventurer like me? Kyle took a seat, their eyes never leaving Eritor's. Because you have knowledge that we require, knowledge about the human race and their combat capabilities. Eritor leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. Kyle hesitated, then leaned in closer. We plan to engage them in war, but first we need to understand them better. Your experiences could be invaluable. Eritor's smile faded. He had encountered many races in his time, but none had been as unpredictable and tenacious as humans. They had a way of turning even the most dire situations to their advantage, a resilience born from their diverse and often tumultuous history. And what makes you think I'll help you? Eritor asked, his tone cold. Kyle's expression hardened. Because you value knowledge and truth. Eritor's eyes narrowed. I'll listen to what you have to say, but make no mistake, I won't condone an unjust war. Kyle nodded, a flicker of relief crossing their face. That's all we ask. Listen and then decide. As they spoke, the stars outside the window continued their silent vigil, unaware of the brewing conflict. Eritor couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet rest on Ganymede Station was about to come to an abrupt end. The journey to the Raxor homeworld was swift and uneventful. Eritor had been provided with a sleek, advanced shuttle that cut through space like a blade. He spent the time reflecting on his conversation with Kyle, weighing the possible outcomes of his involvement. The Raxor homeworld, Raxoria, came into view, a stark contrast to the serene beauty of Ganymede Station. Raxoria was a planet of harsh landscapes and towering structures, a testament to the Raxor's militaristic society. The skies were a perpetual twilight, giving the planet an eerie, otherworldly glow. Eritor's shuttle docked in the heart of the capital city, a sprawling metropolis of steel and stone. He was escorted through a labyrinth of corridors and finally brought before the Raxor Council, a group of stern-faced leaders seated around a grand table. At the head of the table sat Emperor Thaler, a figure of immense presence and authority. His eyes, cold and calculating, met Eritor's as he entered the room. Welcome, Eritor, Thaler said, his voice echoing through the chamber. We appreciate your willingness to speak with us. Eritor inclined his head slightly. I am here to listen and to offer my perspective, nothing more. Thaler gestured to a seat. Please sit. We wish to understand more about the human race, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their tactics. Eritor took his seat, scanning the faces around the table. Humans are a unique species, he began. They are adaptable, resourceful, and fiercely independent. Their history is one of constant conflict and survival, which has forged them into formidable warriors. The council members exchanged glances, some nodding in acknowledgement while others looked skeptical. Thaler leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. And what of their technology? How does it compare to ours? Erator considered his words carefully. Human technology is advanced, but what sets them apart is their ability to innovate under pressure. They learn quickly from their mistakes and adapt their strategies accordingly. Underestimating them would be a grave error. One of the council members, a stern-faced woman named General Risa, spoke up. "We have heard of their victory over the Valorians. How did they achieve this?" Orator's expression darkened. The Valorians were technologically superior, but they underestimated the human spirit. Humans fought with a tenacity that the Valorians were unprepared for. They used guerrilla tactics, exploiting the Valorians' weaknesses and turning their own technology against them. Thaler's eyes glittered with interest. "And what of their weaknesses? Surely they have some—" Erator nodded. Like any species, humans have their flaws. Their societies are often fragmented with internal conflicts and political divisions. Their reliance on technology can also be a double-edged sword, but their greatest weakness is also their greatest strength, their unpredictability. The room fell silent as the council members absorbed Erator's words. Thaler finally spoke, his voice cold and determined. "Thank you for your insights, Erator. You have given us much to consider." Erator stood, sensing the dismissal in Thaler's tone. "Remember my words, Emperor. Humans are not to be underestimated." As he left the chamber, Erator couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The Raxor were determined to proceed with their plans, and he feared that his warnings would go unheeded. The stage was set for a conflict that could reshape the galaxy, and Erator knew that his role in it was far from over. The Raxor leaders wasted no time in executing their plans. Erator's warnings were acknowledged but ultimately disregarded. The Raxor were confident in their military superiority and eager to expand their empire into human territory. The first strike came without warning. The Raxor fleet, a formidable armada of warships, descended upon the human colony of New Terra. The colony, situated on a lush, resource-rich planet, was one of the newer human settlements and relatively undefended. The initial attack was devastating. Raxor warships rained destruction from above, targeting key infrastructure and military installations. Panic spread through the colony as civilians scrambled for safety. The Raxor, efficient and ruthless, seemed unstoppable. But the humans were not entirely unprepared. The colony's defense forces, though outnumbered, mobilized quickly. Erator had once described human tenacity, and now it was on full display. Makeshift defenses were erected, and guerrilla tactics were employed to slow the Raxor advance. Captain Sarah Monroe, the commanding officer of New Terra's defense forces, led the counterattack. Her strategic brilliance and unyielding determination became a beacon of hope for the colonists. Under her leadership, the humans fought back with a ferocity that took the Raxor by surprise. The battle raged for days, turning the once peaceful colony into a war-torn battlefield. The Raxor's initial confidence began to wane as they encountered fierce resistance at every turn. The humans used their intimate knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, launching ambushes and sabotaging Raxor supply lines. Despite their numerical superiority, the Raxor found themselves struggling to maintain their foothold. Erator's words echoed in the minds of their leaders. The humans were not to be underestimated. As the fighting intensified, news of the attack reached the rest of the human systems. Reinforcements were dispatched, and a coalition of human warships made their way to New Terra. The Raxor, realizing the tide was turning, faced a difficult decision: retreat or face annihilation. In a rare moment of prudence, the Raxor commanders ordered a tactical withdrawal. The remnants of their fleet limped away from New Terra, battered and bruised. The human victory, though hard-won, was a testament to their resilience and fighting spirit. Back on Raxoria, the mood was somber. The initial strike had failed, and the cost had been high. Emperor Thaler convened the council to assess the situation. General Risa, who had been one of the staunchest advocates for the war, spoke first. "We underestimated them," she admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "The humans are more formidable than we anticipated." Thaler's expression was one of cold anger. "We cannot afford another failure. We must regroup and reconsider our strategy." As the council deliberated, Erator watched from the shadows, his presence unnoticed. He had returned to Raxoria, driven by a sense of responsibility and a desire to prevent further bloodshed. He knew that the Raxor were at a crossroads, and the decisions made in the coming days would determine the fate of their empire. The humans, now aware of the Raxor threat, were preparing for war. Orator could only hope that his warnings would finally be heeded and that a path to peace could be found before it was too late. The conflict between the Raxor and humans had begun in earnest, and the galaxy braced itself for the storm that was to come. 5 years had passed since the Raxor's ill-fated first strike on New Terra, and the galaxy had become a theater of relentless warfare. The humans, driven by a fierce determination to protect their territories and loved ones, had grown even stronger and more coordinated. Their fleet expanded, their tactics refined, and their will unbroken. Erator, now a reluctant observer and occasional advisor to both sides, moved through the conflict zones, bearing witness to the devastation and heroism that marked the war. His warnings had proven prophetic, but the Raxor leadership, blinded by pride and ambition, had persisted in their campaign against the humans. The once mighty Raxor fleet, which had terrorized many civilizations, was now in disarray. Human ingenuity and adaptability had turned the tide. On every front, the Raxor faced a tenacious and unpredictable foe. Their losses mounted. Systems once firmly under Raxor control were liberated by human forces, and the morale of their troops dwindled. Erator stood on the bridge of a human battleship, the SS, resolute as it patrolled the remnants of a recent battlefield. The stars outside seemed to flicker with a cold indifference to the carnage below. Captain Sarah Monroe, now a decorated war hero, approached Erator. "Hard to believe we've come this far," she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and resolve. Erator nodded, his eyes never leaving the viewport. Humans have a way of turning the impossible into the inevitable, but the cost has been high. Monroe sighed. It has. And it's not over yet. The Raxor still holds several key systems. We've received intelligence that they're consolidating their forces for a last-ditch effort. Erator turned to her, his expression grave. "I need to go to Raxoria. There's someone I need to speak with. This war can't end with the total destruction of the Raxor." Monroe looked skeptical, but nodded. "If anyone can broker peace, it's you. Just be careful, the Raxor are desperate, and desperation breeds danger." Erator set off for Raxoria, a planet now struggling under the weight of a war it had once sought to unleash. The once proud cities were now marked by scars of conflict, and the Raxor people, once so confident in their military might, were weary and disillusioned. The Empress of Raxor, Elora, had watched the decline of her empire with a heavy heart. She had always been a voice of caution, urging her husband, Emperor Thaler, to consider diplomacy over conquest, but Thaler's ambitions had led them down a path of ruin. Erator arrived at the imperial palace, a fortress that had withstood the ravages of time and war. He was granted an audience with the Empress, her presence commanding despite the turmoil around them. "Empress Alara," Orator began, bowing respectfully. Alara's gaze was piercing but weary. Erator took a deep breath. "The war with the humans has reached a critical point. Your people are suffering, and the humans will not stop until the Raxor threat is neutralized. But there is a way to end this without further bloodshed." Alora's expression softened slightly. "I have long advocated for peace, but my husband's advisors and generals are blinded by pride." "What do you propose?" Erator leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Ally with the humans. Show them that the Raxor can be more than conquerors. Help them rebuild what was destroyed. In return, they will offer mercy and a chance for the Raxor people to survive and rebuild." Alara was silent for a long moment. "The Council will never agree to this. They see peace as surrender." "Then we must show them that it is not," Erator insisted. "We must find a way to make them see reason." Empress Alara stood before the Grand Council of Raxor, a body that had once echoed with confidence and power, but now reverberated with anxiety and desperation. The council members were a mix of military leaders, political advisors, and influential nobles, all with their own stakes in the conflict. General Risa, one of the most vocal advocates for continuing the war, eyed Alora with suspicion. "What is the meaning of this, Empress? Why have you called us here?" Alora met Rhys's gaze with unwavering resolve. "We are here to discuss the future of our people, a future that does not involve more death and destruction." The council erupted into murmurs, some shocked, others outraged. Rhys stood, her fists clenched. "You speak of surrender?" "I speak of survival," Alora countered, her voice rising. "The humans have proven themselves a formidable foe. We cannot continue this war and expect anything but annihilation." Admiral Tareen, a respected figure among the council, spoke up. Alera took a deep breath. "We must negotiate peace. I have been in contact with Erator, who has connections with the human leadership. He believes an alliance is possible." Rhys's face twisted in anger. "An alliance? With the very beings we sought to conquer?" "Yes," Alora replied firmly, "because continuing this war will only lead to our extinction. The humans are willing to forgive, to rebuild. We must take this chance." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Rhys's voice cut through the tension. "You would betray everything we have fought for." Alora's eyes flashed with determination. "I would save our people from a needless death. If that is betrayal, then so be it." The council was silent, the weight of Alora's words settling over them. Finally, Admiral Tarin spoke again. "If this alliance can save us, then I am willing to support it. But how do we proceed?" Alora turned to Erator, who had been standing quietly at the back of the chamber. "Erator, will you help us broker this peace?" Erator stepped forward. "I will. But we must act quickly. The humans are preparing for a final assault. We need to show them our intent before it's too late." With a reluctant agreement from the council, Alera and Erator set their plans into motion. Secret negotiations were arranged with human representatives, facilitated by Erator's connections and his reputation for fairness and wisdom. As the meetings progressed, the Empress faced opposition from within her ranks. General Rhys, unable to accept the prospect of peace, conspired with other hardliners to undermine Alera's efforts. They plotted to overthrow the Empress and seize control, believing they could still turn the tide of war with a decisive strike. Alera, aware of the brewing treachery, tightened her inner circle and increased security. The tension within the palace was palpable, a microcosm of the larger conflict. The future of the Raxor people hung in the balance, and the stakes could not be higher. During one of the clandestine meetings, Alora met with Captain Sarah Monroe, who had been sent as a human envoy. Monroe was a symbol of human resilience and strength, and her presence was both a reassurance and a reminder of the stakes. "Empress Alora," Monroe said, her tone respectful but firm, "we understand the difficult position you are in. But know this. The humans are ready to end this war, one way or another. Peace is our preference, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves." Alera nodded. "I understand, Captain, and I assure you I am committed to this alliance. But there are those among my people who resist change. We must be cautious." Monroe's eyes softened. "I believe in your resolve, Empress. Let's make sure this opportunity for peace is not wasted." As the negotiations continued, Alora worked tirelessly to gain the support of the broader Raxor population. She delivered impassioned speeches highlighting the benefits of peace and the potential for a prosperous future alongside the humans. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. But Rhys and her conspirators were not idle. They planned a coup, aiming to seize control and launch a final desperate assault on human territories. Their plans came to a head on the eve of the peace accord's finalization. The night was heavy with tension. Within the walls of the imperial palace, shadows moved with purpose. General Rhys and her loyalists had gathered, their faces set in grim determination. The coup was imminent, and they intended to strike swiftly and decisively. Empress Alara, aware of the impending threat, had taken precautions. Loyal guards were stationed strategically, and Erator had been alerted. The palace was a fortress, but even fortresses could fall from within. As midnight approached, Rhys led her forces through the dimly lit corridors, aiming for the throne room where Alora was likely to be. They moved silently, the clinking of armor and the hum of energy weapons, the only sounds in the oppressive stillness. In the throne room, Alara stood with Erator and her closest advisors, a plan in place. The doors burst open, and Risa stormed in, flanked by her soldiers. "This ends now, Elora," Risa declared, her voice echoing through the grand chamber. "You have betrayed our people for the last time." Elora stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "No, Risa, it is you who have betrayed them by clinging to a war that will destroy us all." Risa raised her weapon, her eyes blazing with fury. "Enough! Seize her!" The loyalists surged forward, but they were met with fierce resistance. Elora's guards, prepared for this moment, fought back with unwavering resolve. The throne room erupted into chaos, a flurry of energy blasts and clashing blades. Erator moved with the agility of a seasoned warrior, deflecting attacks and disarming foes with precision. He reached Risa, their eyes locking in a moment of understanding and regret. "Stand down, Risa," Erator urged. "This doesn't have to end in more bloodshed." Risa's expression hardened.
"You don't understand. The humans will never accept us."
Erator shook his head. "You're wrong. They want peace as much as we do, but we have to show them we're willing to change." The battle raged around them, but Risa's resolve began to waver. She looked around, seeing her loyalists falling, the futility of their resistance evident. Finally, with a pained expression, she lowered her weapon. "Maybe you're right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. With Risa's surrender, the remaining loyalists laid down their arms. The coup had been thwarted, but the cost had been high. The throne room was littered with the wounded and the fallen, a stark reminder of the price of conflict. Alara stepped forward, her gaze filled with both sadness and hope. "This must be the end of our divisions. We must unite for the sake of our people." Risa nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I see that now. I'm sorry, Elora." The peace accord was finalized the following day. Human and Raxor representatives stood together, a symbol of the new alliance. The war was officially over, and the work of rebuilding began. The humans, true to their word, offered aid and support to the Raxor. They helped to rebuild cities, restore infrastructure, and heal the wounds of war. The Raxor, humbled and grateful, began to see the humans not as enemies, but as allies. Erator, having played a pivotal role in the peace process, found himself once again at a crossroads. His journey had brought him full circle, from a quiet rest on Ganymede Station to the heart of a conflict that had reshaped the galaxy. As he stood on the steps of the rebuilt Imperial Palace, looking out at the bustling city below, he felt a sense of fulfillment. The war was over, but his adventures were far from finished. There were always new challenges to face, new worlds to explore, and new stories to be written. And so, with a heart full of hope and a spirit undimmed by the trials of the past, Erator set off on his next journey, ready to embrace whatever the stars had in store for him. The skies above Raxoria Prime, the heart of the Raxor Empire, were a tapestry of chaos and destruction. Human battlecruisers, sleek and deadly, cut through the void with precision, while Raxor defenses sputtered and faltered under the relentless assault. Erator watched from the bridge of the Empress's flagship, the Aurora, his heart heavy with the weight of the inevitable conclusion. The Empress stood beside him, her regal composure a stark contrast to the turmoil outside. Her decision to ally with the humans had been fraught with peril, but it was the only path to survival for her people. Her eyes, once filled with fiery determination, now held a glimmer of hope. "Commander Erator," she said, her voice unwavering. Erator nodded, his respect for the Empress deepened by her courage. "I'll coordinate with the human fleet. We'll target the remaining Raxor strongholds and create safe corridors for evacuation." The plan was set into motion. Human and Raxor forces, once bitter enemies, now worked in tandem to dismantle the remnants of the Raxor military. Strategic strikes disabled key installations, and rescue missions ferried civilians to safety. The Empress's loyalists, equipped with insider knowledge, played a crucial role in outmaneuvering the more fanatical factions within their own ranks. In the heat of battle, Eritor found himself facing old comrades and new foes alike. The war had changed him, as it had changed everyone, but his resolve remained unshaken. He fought not for victory, but for peace he had once thought unattainable. Hours turned into days, and the final stand drew to a close. The Raxor capital lay in ruins, a testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Yet amidst the devastation, a new beginning emerged. The Empress's forces, bolstered by human support, established control and began the arduous task of rebuilding. As the smoke cleared, the Empress addressed her people, her voice resonating through the remnants of her empire. Today marks the end of an era of strife and the dawn of a new age of cooperation. Together with our former adversaries, we shall forge a future where our children can live without fear.